Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible Lessons. We are on Genesis 18 now, which means we're getting to the sodomizing, or quickly on our way there. I'm sure that's what everyone was waiting for. And our usual team is assembled. Everybody want to say hello?
Hello.
Well,
Hey there.
Hello.
Yeah, and Tomer wanted to take a moment to say something to everybody. So go ahead, Tomer.
Yeah. In the previous episode, I've several comments stated that I've acted quite rude to the to the guests, and I've interrupted several times, and I've noticed this as well. So I want to say that I apologize for anyone who has felt if I've been a bit rude. This is my basically my first time live streaming in such a big crowd. So I still need to learn how to behave in a live stream. So please be gentle with me, okay? And yeah. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to comment as well. There was someone whose name was Zuri Sadai, or his middle name was Zuri Sadai, and no wonder I didn't know what his Hebrew name was, because the King James Bible butchers Hebrew names. So the Zuri Sadai in Hebrew is Tsuri Shaddai, which is composed of the word Tsur, which is flint, and Shaddai, which I think it is another word of God. So the name is like could mean flint of God. So my
I think
apologies.
Shaddai also means mountain, so it could be Flint of the Mountains.
Yeah, maybe.
That would make sense. El Shaddai, meaning God of the mountain. They go to Mount Sinai with
Yeah,
climbing
but
we
and
did
yelling.
talk about that last week.
Yes.
We did.
So,
We did.
So
Yes,
tell him his
so-
middle name actually means Flintstone, and he'll be fine.
Yeah,
I like it.
so I apologize sincerely, and I'll try to notice these problems when we go on.
We can't stay mad at you, Tomer.
Aw.
Thank you.
As,
Okay.
Good
as,
to
a,
see you back, David.
as a little addition to what you just said, David, so one of the more famous young Earth creationists is called Feuerstein, which is German. The name actually means it's Feuerstein. And you'd be pleased to know that Fred Flintstone in Germany is called Fred Feuerstein. So it all makes sense.
It's too perfect.
He seems like the type that would run in a car with no bottom and just kick his feet and
Yes.
think that was how it worked. Come on, we can all picture it. We've seen him.
We need sound
All right.
effects for the show, clearly.
Well, that's an interesting bit of information. So thank you for that. My wife obtained yet another snake, and she named this one Samael, which is
Oh, nice.
Nice. Very nice.
That's
Oh.
a little later in the mythological developments, but yeah, still nice. Very good.
Yes.
It could
You'll have to
also,
introduce
if
yourself as MIL.
if you literally read it in Hebrew, it could also mean the drug of God.
Oh my.
Okay.
God gets high off of snake bites. I could see that. I could actually really see that.
What's that whole thing?
And this
in,
just makes sense.
No, what's that whole thing in which gospel was it at the end? Where they stuck that, was it in Mark?
It's
The second
Oh
ending in
no,
Mark?
it's the fake ending of Mark with
Yeah,
you
yeah,
will
snakes.
grasp poisonous snakes and they will not harm you.
Oh yes.
and-
Yeah.
Oh yes.
We just spawned the
Fake
snake hunting
ending of Mark.
churches.
And all the Pentecostals in Appalachia who occasionally die of snake venom.
Yeah.
Big fucking surprise.
Honestly, they're torturing those poor snakes. They deserve it. Stop torturing snakes. They don't deserve to be starved and put in a cage and thrown around by a bunch of screaming people who are jumping up and down and speaking gibberish. Not that it would matter to
Speaking
the
of
snake.
which, I have a snake that looks very much like a rattlesnake, and I should go get it if you guys are going to keep talking about this.
We'll be good. We'll be good.
Don't
Let's
treat on
read.
me.
All right. Shall we begin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I
Who's
don't know
going to do
who's-
the reading today?
I don't know who wants to do the reading today, but I did want to point out that I think I left my my commentary and translation that I've been reading from
Luckily
Robert
for
Alter's.
you.
I think I left it at the studio. So instead, today, I will be occasionally citing John Van Setters. If you guys don't know who John Van Setters is, I really suggest looking him up. But John Van Setters is a very well-known biblical scholar. He
Lilith is horrified by this.
what?
Lilith looks horrified at this.
No, I'm not horrified. I'm excited. Hang on a second. I forgot I had something.
Okay.
Sorry, Lords. Keep going.
I'll finish this this little spiel. So, in the 70s, John Van Setters and Thomas L. Thompson wrote books in like the same couple years about the same thing, that being the historicity of the patriarchs. And before the 70s, everyone just kind of accepted the historicity of the patriarchs in some case, or in some manner. But then after the publication of these books, while they weren't accepted right away, the scholarship therein was accepted as consensus eventually. So the writings of John Van Setters and Thomas L. Thompson have been very influential when it comes to patriarchal studies. So I will be, because we're good into this Abraham story so far. I figured it would be a good idea to bring it along with me. So
Yeah, and I have my usual rabbinical interpreters, Chazal, Rashi, and Ibn Ezra, and the rest, and many more.
Yay.
Okay, who wants to read?
I guess I
It
will.
looks like Lilith is talking, but not hearing anything she's saying.
Yeah, Lilith is muted.
Lilith, you muted.
Oh, she's frozen now. Oh,
Oh no. Aaron, you want to jump into it?
Yeah, I will.
All
The
right.
Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was
He's
sitting
muted.
at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. Oh, this is going to be important. We need to discuss this later. When he saw
Am I
them,
muted?
he hurried from the entrance of his tent
Oh.
to meet them and bowed low to the ground.
I want to stop here for. Sorry,
I too want to stop.
Yeah,
Dave,
you go ahead.
Well, I just want to point out that as we read this, it opens with the Lord appears to him, and then 3 guys appear to him. But
Yeah.
the way he talks in the rest of this, it sounds like he's just talking to one guy. So it's very interesting that there's suddenly 3 matched up.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on this. So according to Rashi, quoting from Chazal, God visited the sick Abraham on the 3rd day after his circumcision to inquire after his health. So this is why God came to him.
Notice there's no mention of any of this in the actual story, but continue.
Okay. So why are these called men if we later find? No, this is. Sorry, these are the angels. This was verse 2. Okay, but something very interesting. Ibn Ezra comments about a Christian interpretation of the verse, because some Christians interpret the 3 men as the God, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, and he comments. Behold, a few say that God is 3 men. He is one and he is 3, and they are inseparable. They forget that Scripture expressly states, and the 2 angels came to Sodom at even, meaning that the angels are separable and thus cannot refer to God.
Yeah.
Okay?
You get a lot of that kind of respinning from Christians where they try to read Christian ideas into the Old Testament where they don't belong.
So let me ask for a clarification there. The Tomer, you're saying your scripture says that there's confirmation that these 3 angels cannot be associated with God.
Did
I hear that right?
He's responding to the Christian reinterpretation of this.
The Christian. Yes, I'm aware of that one, because that one gets a little muddy here in a moment.
Right. No, these are 3 angels, as we'll see later on, and. David, you spoken about the connection between God's appearance in the first verse and the 3 men in verse 2. So one explanation is the appearance of God is done by 3 men, and and something very interesting, there's a combination of two stories. In one story, there's one visitor to Abraham, and in the other story, there are three visitors. The combination
Yep.
of the stories is done so to unify the announcement of the birth of Isaac from one story and the announcement of punishing Sodom in the other story.
Yep, I concur
We
entirely.
spoke last time. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
We hear
Yes,
you,
but
but
you're
Okay, good.
actually
We
You're a little
spoke-
quiet for whatever reason.
Okay, let me try something else. But
Let's talk louder.
Okay. How about now?
Jesus.
I fixed it. We
both
spoke
met
last time
Abraham.
about Melchizedek. Sorry?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
We spoke last time about
was just
Melchizedek and about the Christians reading a Jesus avatar of God character in to the stories, and this is what they've done here too. I remember hearing it that God and like the avatar of God and two angels come down to Abraham, and then the two angels split off to do their duty, and God remains to argue with Abraham. Because I don't know, it's a tradition. Jews
Yeah.
and God argue all the time. This is how they started. This was the origin of everything.
Also,
ambiguous how it's written.
according to the Talmud, specifically Bava Metzia 86b, these three men are in fact the angels Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel, and all the three of them have a specific purpose. So Michael has comes to announce to Sarah that she gives birth. Raphael comes to heal Abraham, and Gabriel is the one who will overturn Sodom.
Wait, Raphael came to do what now?
Come to heal Abraham. The name
Heal. I think it said kill. Sorry.
No, it's heal. So, because
Getting him mixed up
and-
with Moses, apparently. Yeah.
yeah. In Hebrew, Raphael is composed of Rapha or Rofe, which is to healer,
Ah.
doctor. So yeah.
What were the other Ninja Turtles doing at the time?
Trying to invent pizza.
All right, let's continue.
Okay, so I think there's going to be some problems with that interpretation about the three angels.
Oh, yeah.
so we will continue. He said,
What?
"If I have found favor in your eyes, my lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So there's three guys show up.
Yeah.
And he's gonna wash their feet. And
He's
they're
offering
gonna
them
eat.
hospitality. He's
it's
offering
a
them
very-
hospitality in the manner of the Middle East.
It's a
And
very
particularly
Talking
when they
with
walk
the
around.
one person.
notice that this is a very modest hosting, but in later verses, it's not at all.
Which
Okay.
we'll see when we get to the later verses.
So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seas."
Seah.
What?
This, yeah.
Seaz.
Seaz.
Measures
This
of
is
meaning.
who wanted to speak?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so this seah is around 7.3 liters, which to the US people is around 2 US gallons of flour. So it's 3 seahs is a lot of flour. It's like six
Yeah.
gallons. So
Okay.
That's a lot of flour. That's a lot of bread. How hungry are
Yeah.
these men?
Being
Yeah.
breakfast for the guests.
yeah,
how,
but
how
notice,
hungry
but,
are these
I
ethereal
also,
beings?
Mm.
yeah, I wanted to mention that it's not written here, but of the finest, it's written on the finest flour. In the Bible, it's solet, which is similar to semolina flour, which is a very high quality. And also in the Hebrew Bible, it says that bake some bread. It reads ugot. Now uga in modern Hebrew is cake, and it's derived from the word ug, which itself is derived from the word igul, which means circle. So what they are doing, it's not a cake as we know it. It's a circular shaped bread or an ash cake, as I think Epiphanius comments on this.
So like a pan flatbread kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Something like a naan or what's the bread that they have with not falafel. Yeah, but a pan flatbread.
Yeah.
Something you can make quickly.
Oh, look at the
so-
baby.
Look at the baby.
It's basically Abraham saying, "If I knew you were coming, I would have baked a cake."
Right?
Oh no, the interesting part is when he
That-
serves them next, and I'll get
Yeah,
back
that
to
is-
that.
That is Samael.
Samuel.
Oh,
Mm.
Samuel, you're so
I love
cute.
rabbit.
Okay. All right. So continuing on. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree.
Now, I want to interject something right here because this sounds like a very boring thing and very typical for herding people who, herd camels or goats or sheep or whatever to prepare meat and milk and curds. But I would like to point out that the biggest part of kosher law is not having any milk or meat together, and that all comes
Mhm.
down to the verse, "You shall not boil a goat or a calf in its mother's milk."
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of that kosher separation. And if the Christian interpretation that this is God or this is angels of God or the whatever of those two interpretations is correct, that means that is the dish that Abraham served to God or his representatives, which means that it's entirely possible to justify the position that right now observant Jews have to buy 2 sets of dishes, a hyper hot dishwasher, smash things that are cross-contaminated, all because Abraham was a bad cook. I'm just saying that, or God ate it so it's sacred so nobody can ever have it again.
I think
One
this
of these
verse
two
is,
things is true.
I think this verse is way after Abraham,
It
because
is.
just because you see he dishes out both milk and meat. So
Oh yeah, the rule comes much later,
yeah, it
but the
comes
rule
much
comes
later.
after this experience. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, are we
Yeah.
trying to cut off our goat herding roots, or is God very deeply invested in this for some more personal reason?
God's like, yeah, I don't want that dish again. Don't do it again.
Nobody
rabbit
can ever make it again.
There is another rabbit hole we could go down, and that was a rabbi who told me that there was some rule in Ugarit about for Baal or for El, they would boil the calf in the milk of its mother, and so this whole thing is to get away from what they were doing up north in Syria. But anyway,
This is before
I
they
still
had
think it's
cocoa.
funnier. I
Hey,
still think
yes,
it's
your
funnier
way
if
is
it's
better.
God.
Your way is funnier.
Okay. So then they're sitting under the tree, these 3 guys and Abraham, and they say, "Where is your wife Sarah?" They asked him. He goes, "There, in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son."
Ooh,
Now
what you
Sarah
intended
was
to do.
listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?"
I got to break just for a minute. How does the author know what she was thinking to herself? Just
because
hashtag
it's
just
God.
Just saying. Okay.
It's God who wrote the thing, so
Divine revelation.
he must
Yeah.
know.
It's God is the ultimate third person omniscient
Right.
narrator. I mean, let's
right,
face it.
right. I keep forgetting this. Yep.
But notice that this is the second time that they've been told that they're going to get a child. First, Abraham was told. Apparently, he didn't tell Sarah. It's news to her, and she ends up laughing.
Well, in fairness, he thought that Hagar having Ishmael as a surrogate for Sarah would suffice to fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I
So-
was going to say about this is the reason given for them not having children is different. Earlier, it says that that Sarah was actually barren, and here it's a case of they're both old, and she says she's worn out, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Means
Basically, she
she's not having She doesn't have to go to the red tent once a month anymore.
Or,
Um,
or, or Abraham to
it can
Chagall.
also mean that she her skin will turn. Oh, sorry. There is a what was this verse again? After will I now have displeasure could also mean that her skin will turn soft like that of a young woman, and the yeah, and
I've never
the
had. I've never seen sex do that before.
and after I'm worn out, basically it could also mean that after my skin has already I don't know if it's crippled. No, it's not the right. After my skin has turned old.
Wrinkly.
So it could mean that.
Okay. So when the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord?
Yes.
I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." This is the important thing that we have to have for timeless information. This is
So I do have a good bit of commentary on this section. So the section that we just read, but primarily verses 1 through 15. So they tell the story about this son that is promised to Sarah and Abraham, right? The conclusion of the actual story comes in, of course, chapter 21, which we will get to, but that's where we have the birth of Isaac. So a lot of scholars do consider that this was one of the breaking points in the text, where you kind of had this intertwining of two different documents. So because if you go from verse 14 to verse 21:2 right away, so you have, "Is anything impossible for Yahweh? In due season, a year's time, I will return to you, and Sarah will have a son." And then jumping to chapter 21 verse 2, "So Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age in due season, just as God had said to him." So that follows, pretty much directly afterwards. Now there's kind of a very similar account in 2 Kings 4, where we have the same form of the story, but it's of course about I think Elisha is giving a prediction about this the birth of a son.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
The woman that fed him.
yeah. So the form basic to both of these stories is the situation of infertility, the prediction of the childbirth in a set period, some expression of doubt, and of course the fulfillment of what is predicted. This same pattern with slight modification may well be found in other prophetic healing stories as well. Furthermore, in the cult of Asclepius at Epidaurus, there were records kept of healings, some of which included infertility, which describe how those wishing to be healed spent the night at the shrine. The god appeared to them, announced their healing, and within a stated period, 1 year for childbirth, they were healed. And that's a very significant parallel to other cultures of the time. So it's perfectly possible that this, and while this is usually in more traditional dating, if we go with like Wellhausen's kind of breakdown of the texts, then you kind of just have this as a parallel to a different account and of course, I would say that chapter 21 would be a parallel to chapter 16 in those accounts, but Van Setters argues against that demarcation. So when this could have just been a general kind of healing ritual, specifically of healing infertility, instead of the miraculous, woman can't have a kid and then does. This is instead a miraculous healing story.
It's fascinating to me to watch how not only you have doublets and triplets in the Old Testament, but the same tropes just get reused for that, for Second King, for Samuel, for Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother. It's like they just keep going back to the well and reusing the same trope after
Yeah.
trope after trope.
And we're going to
Mhm.
find the same thing with the next story as well, where it's repeated in
100%.
Judges.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clearly a literary staple of myth and of Hebrew writings, particularly, to have doubles and triplicate of a concept, and which is why it's so ridiculous to take all of these things as literal historical accounts. Like, literal historical accounts do not conform to literary tropes. That's not how life do.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Wasn't Anna, Mary's mother, also elderly? Did she give birth to Mary?
Depending on the accounts, she could either be elderly or a virgin, like a nun of the temple, which is not a thing that really exists, but who cares when you're writing Christian fan fiction, who then got married but wasn't supposed to do it because something Christian fan fiction.
I respect everyone's scholarly opinion, and I learn things all the time, every time I do these. And Lilith was just saying, why do it's not very intelligent to take them literally. But I was raised in a tradition that Christian tradition where we did, and
Sure.
so like I think like there's the academic aspect of examining the Bible, and then there is the cultural impact of the Bible, because most of the Christians listening are ex-Christians and Jews and Muslims. They've all been circumcised. So even if they weren't raised in the males, that even if they weren't raised in a literal tradition, people obviously are still taking this seriously and literally to some degree in 2022.
100%. And I just want to say, I mean, I was raised in that same tradition, very similar to what you were, where people took it literally.
Mhm.
I look back at that with intense frustration. But I'm also, I mean, I don't have the degree of expertise that, say, Lawrence does for what really happened. And people have said, I want to know what the text originally meant. And I mean, that's a topic for debate. But there's also what the text has meant historically, particularly to those Christians who are the most fundamentalist and who are therefore making the greatest nuisance of themselves. And I don't know if I can show this on camera. No, apparently it's not going to catch. But I have the old Schofield Bible here. And the Schofield Bible was an infamous, like an evangelical, with notes and everything, and many of the tropes and sort of stories that would be passed around, the camel in the eye of the needle being the small door thing, a lot of them can trace back to the evangelical graded commentary from Bibles like that. And so there's a lot of there's the history of what the book actually says, how it was actually constructed. There's also the history of how cultures have interpreted it and how that is affecting us right now. And which of those interpretations is the most stubborn about being seen as the correct one.
It also reinforces your point of how like awful it is that it's taken literally, because it has actual physical effects on the real world still.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
This version seems to be written differently than it would certainly different than I remember. I don't know if it's a different reading or if my memory has failed. But as I remember this story, it was 3 guys showed up, and then 2 of them went to Sodom, and 1 stayed behind.
Yeah,
That's
this
the way I
will be
remembered it.
this in chapter 19. You will have 2 people who come to Sodom.
That's how it'll go.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is. So there's 3 guys now, and then two of them leave. Okay.
And 1 stays and argues with Abraham, and he is God.
Yes.
That's how I read it. Yeah.
So 2 of them
so
sod off to Sodom.
sod off to Sodom. All right. So let me find. Where was I?
16, I think.
16. Oh, that's right. When the men got up to leave, they looked down toward Mos Eisley Spaceport. And Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?"
Who's he talking to? Who's hearing this?
He's talking to this.
Suddenly it's Yahweh.
No, this
It's
is his
out
own
loud.
thoughts. This is his own thoughts. Even. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So
No,
God is thinking out loud.
yes, God is thinking out loud.
That's not what God said. God said this isn't the Abraham you're looking for.
So basically,
Shall I hide from Abraham? You will never
So
find a
basically-
more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Scum and villainy.
yeah. So basically, I've read that this verse is to point out that Abraham is like a prophet. There is, for example, a verse in Amos, which describes how God reveals his prophets all of his secrets and his thoughts, and I think it's Amos 3:7.
So Abraham's reading his mind at the moment.
Who, Tomer, who is attributed to have written Genesis?
Moses.
Traditionally,
All of the Pentateuch is, according to Jewish tradition, is written by Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
According to the
usually
original,
God's thinking.
according to the documentary hypothesis, this section is considered a Yahwist section, which would have been written by someone in the southern kingdom of Judah, probably by a absolutist and worshiping only Yahweh. So what's it called? Not a
monotheist.
Yeah, but
Monolatrist?
monolatrist.
Levite?
Yeah, monolatrist. Yeah,
No.
where this is the only God we're allowed to worship. Don't you
Mm.
dare worship any of the other gods, but they do exist, but don't you dare.
Right.
But either way, it's multiple people and certainly not Moses.
Oh no,
Oh,
there
yes,
was no
clearly.
Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even when it comes to Jewish traditions, like it would be the entirety of the Pentateuch being written by Moses, except for like the last few, I forget how long it is, but where Moses dies. Except
Yeah,
for
the
that
last
part,
few
they're
lines.
like,
Yeah.
Joshua wrote that one.
Yeah,
But they're basing that off of just the next book. So
Yeah, but I've also read a couple of interpretations which says that Moses did write these verses, but he wrote them with a
crying.
tear.
yeah.
Oh no! Spoiled the end and I'm gonna die.
I'm prophetically writing about my death on the mountain. I have no idea who's going to carry this down to the people so they can preserve it, but I'm sad.
You could imagine them doing that kind of, the writing people do where they close their eyes and they're supposed to be controlled by spirits, whatever. So he's like writing it out like that and then reads it to himself. Moses is going to die. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Did Moses die in the Bible?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
top
Because
of the
there's
mountain.
No,
Deuteronomy.
he's still creeping
With
around.
Elijah?
He's,
Well, no.
I know.
No.
He makes guest appearances,
Elijah.
but he does die.
I think with Elijah or Eliyahu, as he is what his name actually is, he is risen up to the heavens. So he's not
The
really
only two
dead.
people who don't die are Enoch, who we've already covered, and Eliyahu, but we'll call him Elijah because everyone knows him by that name. Moses is a weird one because he dies, but his body is, at least in commentary, believed to have been taken off by angels so that people wouldn't worship it. So he's dead, but there's no body.
And the text clearly says he was buried somewhere in Moab,
Okay.
But no one
but
knows to this day. Yeah.
It was kind of cruel as well because God says, right, you can go up this mountain and have a look at the land. You're not going to get in there, but you can have a look at it and then you're going to die.
God's a dick.
And he says it about that. That's his bedroom demeanor too. It's about that callous too. Time for you to die now. Go lie down with your ancestors.
As we see here in what happens next, where we get the, how many people can we genocide? How many good people can we kill along with the others? It's always, the answer is always all of them, of course, but we look more civilized if we debate the point first.
We can pretend
Let's
that we
continue
cared.
to the negotiation point. Yeah.
It's for form's sake.
And if anybody's confused about who is Eliyahu, he's the one that invented the search engine.
He also made a chocolate drink. Oh, that was you here.
And then he was bought out of the market by his brother Eli Google.
Oh, Bible study
All
was
right,
never
so
this fun when I was a Christian.
18. Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. So the Chinese are going to be blessed through him. That's interesting.
They didn't seem to think so.
Yeah, they don't seem to be aware of it at all. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord
Wait,
said,
he's saying this to himself. I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah,
Yes, these
God
are
is,
his thoughts.
God is plotting.
Mhm.
If it was
Thinking out
Nephi
loud.
saying this, it would be completely different.
We have,
Hi,
to, we have to wonder
Nephi.
that maybe God is thinking things all the time, but why don't we have any of that written down?
See,
And
this
ha-
is why
and
we
how-
think one of the three guys was God, because somebody has to be on the other side of this dialogue. This is
Mhm.
Yeah, and it gets
just doesn't
worse
make
in a
any
moment.
sense. Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. The men turned away and went to Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Now, it doesn't say two of the men went to Sodom, but later.
Wait.
Later,
I think you have jumped. You've skipped verse 20 and 21.
Oh, you're right. I did. Okay.
All right.
The Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see what they have done. See if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If
I hear
not,
those guys book
I
of
will
angels.
know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
So
I said,
JR?
I hear those guys. I said, I hear those guys book of angels.
So
Okay.
I wanted to comment on this. So the
Mhm.
outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah. This outcry could be either the outcry of the oppressed people of Sodom, or it could be the outcry that comes from the city because of the sins of its people. And there is an interesting story from Yalkut Shimoni, which is an Aggadaic compilation of older interpretations of the Bible, dated from around the 11th century to 13th century, which talks about a literal outcry that happens in Sodom. Would you like to hear it?
Sure.
Okay, so this is my translation. So if I butcher things up, then I apologize. Rabbi Judah said, "It has been declared in Sodom that all who had an ounce of bread for the poor shall be burned by fire. Plotit, a daughter of Lot, was married to one of the highest of Sodom. She saw a poor man in one of the city streets, and her soul turned to sadness. What has she done? Every day when she went to pump some water, she would take food from her home, put it in her pot, put it in her pot, and would feed the poor man. The people of Sodom said, from what does this poor man live? And when they knew about it, they burned her. She said, Dear God, make judgment upon me. And she screamed before the throne of God. At the same time, God said, I will come down and see that if the woman's screams were made by the people of Sodom, I shall turn it upside down."
Okay, so God is not.
I have questions about all this.
Yeah, God is not is depicted here as neither omniscient nor omnipotent, or excuse me,
No.
nor omnipresent.
He didn't even know where Sarah was.
Yeah, well, there's a number of things that God doesn't know. Mr. Omniscient has missed a lot of memos.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
just being disingenuous.
No, he was fucking off making another
But-
galaxy. He was
but
doing
also-
Andromeda. He left someone else in charge. They buggered it all up, and now he's like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah,
Damn,
but also,
damn it, Bale! I gave you.
You had one job.
but also, what about what you said? So we have the usual explanation of Chazal. The Torah spoke in human tongues. It didn't really go down there. It's just how we understand it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Classic,
Torah.
classic. Yeah, so I want to point out that now we're getting into what seems to be how would you call it? It's kind of a way
Bargaining
to
session with the Lord.
yes, but it's a way to I guess kind of like an antedated form of the prophetic traditions that we'll see in Ezekiel and Isaiah about interceding for the people, which with Ezekiel was a big issue because in Ezekiel he gets that command of divine silence, right? Like he's not allowed to speak unless God speaks through him. And for Ezekiel, that's an issue because he was also told that if he didn't tell the people about this coming destruction, then the blood was essentially on his hands. So like Ezekiel was kind of in a tough spot. And we'll see themes of Ezekiel and also Isaiah. We kind of got like a nod at Isaiah earlier when he, what was the quotation there, about his being a servant very early on. So but yeah, the servant is supposed to, of course, intercede for the many, right? So it seems like there's going to be a kind of like a callback to that because this is probably an exilic text, I would think. So it would make sense with all the prophetic traditions going around at the time, or the prophetic themes.
Okay, moving on to verse 22. The men turned away and went. Okay, well, never mind. I'll do that about that. Okay. Kicker White Lion for Czech Czech Republic 50 kroner.
Thank God. Finally.
Yeah. No more Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
I know that place. It's right next to Namibia.
When you go on another expedition, could you ask your paleontologist friends if gay paleontologists call themselves Homotherium gay beasts?
Only the bears.
Yeah, because
only the bears,
guys. In the Greek, homo means same or similar, so it'd be same beast.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of unfortunate name choice, but Homotherium is already taken. So somebody happened across what looks like a lion, but it's actually it's a Machaerodon, is a scimitar cat. So it just doesn't have like super pronounced saber teeth, but it very much looks like a lion. So they named it same beast, meaning same as a lion. Homotherium. Already taken. Yeah. Okay, and then the next one, David Wellings says, does constant 3-day references to sun's position in the sky at solstices? Yeah, let me read that again.
No.
Does constant 3-day references refer to sun's position in the sky at solstices have checked astronomy data?
The answer, I would say just no. 3 is a fairly small number. It's a fairly easy number to understand. There is like right now we have phrases like comedy comes in threes, right? Like that's not a reference to the sun or astronomy. It's just a way that we as humans have collectively, if you could say, evolved to tell stories, to get points across. It's the 1, 2, and then 3 to hammer it in. So there's a variety of reasons why they would use 3 depending on the context, but we can't be reading so much into these numbers to assume that it's all about solstices and it's all astrotheology, because it's just not.
The feast days of a lot of religions they correlate with solstices, though, like Christmas, which is also Hanukkah, and Easter, which is also the Passover. So these are days that people said, let's eat and celebrate, and they always happen to coincide on those same solstices and equinoxes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's-
if we were to remain consistent, then we would have to ask about the other feasts and why are they not coinciding with these things.
Yeah.
So like it's not a consistent framework, and that is my biggest issue with astrotheological
Yeah.
stuff.
And
Yeah.
the Hebrews tended to use base things around the moon. It was a lunar calendar. rather than
Yeah.
the sun.
There are religions that correspond with the lunar calendar too.
Yeah.
Judaism specifically does, and so it's like I'm sure there are cases where that's the case. There are a few occasions here and there, but it's far from universal. And 3 is a number commonly used. It's like 3, 12, 40. Or you'll see these
Right.
popping up all the time in Bible stories as being somehow important, and that means they're symbolic, and you shouldn't take them literally. So,
All right, next chat is that Deviant Outcast offers 100, I think, Swedish kroner. Maybe is that?
Yes, Swedish krona.
Okay. If Moses weren't a mythical person and did actually write the books of Moses, why weren't they written in ancient Egyptian or hieratic or hieroglyphics?
Like the Book of
Well-
Mormon was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Mm.
like the Book of Moses from Joseph Smith, and that was in
That
one
was
way
a
he was-
reformed Egyptian, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Reformed.
Or at least you'd think it would at least be Midianite because he spent a lot of time there when he grew up.
Well, considering that Egypt is like is an enemy in the Bible, then
Yeah, but he was supposed to have been educated in Pharaoh's house in Egypt. So yes,
yeah.
you would expect him to have written in a language conversant with having been educated there, whatever that might have been. Although, yeah, I don't know how common literacy would have been in Midian at that time. I imagine not very.
Maybe that's why he spent so much time up the mountain. He spent 40 days and 40 nights, and it's God actually teaching him Hebrew. God's
Ah,
language.
Mhm.
It's not really a
which-
trick to spend 40 days and 40 nights somewhere. What would be interesting is he spent 40 days and 20 nights.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we have Keshva, I think is how to say that. I'm not sure. Says if Moses wrote the original text, how did he know that he died?
God told him.
Such a
Yeah,
good question.
yeah. Either God told him, or even what I think is mainstream in modern Jewish interpretation is that Joshua just wrote that part.
Yeah.
yeah, he wrote
Okay.
the sign off.
He probably could have figured out that he was going to die. It's quite normal for
Mm.
humans to do that eventually.
So back to verse 22. The men turned away and went to Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. So
Okay,
the way that
so
I read,
no, go ahead, Aaron.
the only
I'll
way I
finish
could
later.
interpret this is that 2 of those men went to Sodom and one of them is still standing there. Because when we get to the Sodom, there's 2 guys there.
Something
Not three.
interesting about this verse. This is an example, according to Chazal. This is an example of what is called tikkun soferim, which translates to correction of the scribes. This is a change of wording in the Bible so that God's honor shall preserve. So originally, this verse read, "But the Lord remained standing before Abraham," the opposite way.
Aha.
Yeah. So
I love that I love the rabbis have a phrase for we had to rewrite this to fix it because it was broken, and
Yeah.
that's the reason they give us to. It's funny because I mentioned that very phrase in the book I'm working on now, and the fact that they do it to preserve God's honor. I just am endlessly.
How many
delighted
times
by
have we seen where somebody has to come up and says, "This is what his infallible eminence meant to say"?
that. Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
God is
So-
so infallible, he can't go 2 sentences without making a muddle of it that some guy with a library has to come in and say, well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are 18 examples of tikkun soferim in the Bible, according to Chazal. One of them includes the more famous example is Job 2:9, where Job's wife tells him to bless God and die. But originally, this was written as curse God and die.
It
So
still is in Christian
name-
translations.
Yeah.
the name was changed to prevent blasphemy. So this is an
Even though
example
it
of
makes the
tikkun
story
soferim.
make no sense, at least it doesn't do blasphemy. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like a good thing to shout out if you're angry at somebody. Bless God and die.
So next verse, this is important. Then Abraham approached him. So Abraham approached the Lord. And in other translations, it says, drew nigh to God, right? So how do you do that? When I saw this depicted as a children's cartoon, right, where Abraham is talking to a twinkling star, except that in this he can draw nigh to that twinkling star. No, there's a guy there. There were three guys. Two of them left and went to Sodom. There's one still standing there, and Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?"
Hashtag just saying.
So this is also part of the prophetic stuff that we were talking about, because the idea that they had kind of a corporate personality, meaning that the whole group can be represented by one person, and one person can represent the whole group. And I go over this quite a bit in my Suffering Servant video. So it might, if you do watch that, this part will make a bit more sense. So the initial thing is that when it comes to punishment, it's usually, if enough people have sinned, then the entirety of the people are punished for it. And of course,
Collective guilt.
Yeah.
Collective guilt.
Even the just in that group would still be punished, and that is kind of explained through this idea of a corporate personality on one hand. So like
or guilt by association.
That too, yeah, or guilt by association. So I do cover that a lot more in my Suffering Servant video, but this still seems to be an interpretation of the prophetic tradition, is what I'm getting across.
You do get people saying, "You've brought guilt upon us," in that kind of way as well. It's like one person sinned, you brought this guilt upon all of us. Because
yes, you've done some sin and stained us all, and we'll all be punished for it. It's a very punitive view of God that is common in areas where nature is a little bit more unpredictable. The gods of Egypt tended to be less frivolous and impulsive because the floods of the Nile were a fairly consistent phenomenon. Not to say there were never bad years, but generally things continued in a cycle, and the gods were the facilitation of that cycle, and everything, comes and goes as it comes and goes. In an area like this, where you do not have such a consistent thing to rely upon, the gods become more impulsive, vindictive, angry, and you get the idea that someone could be bad enough to halt the rain, that if you sinned, if you upset the god, then you might not have the rain, or might not have sufficient sun, or whatever it is you need, that you might bring calamity because you had sinned. And it took centuries. I mean, literally, still to this day, we are fighting people to say, no, you cannot be good enough to prevent an earthquake, nor bad enough to cause a hurricane. That's not how this works.
Yeah. Pat Buchanan.
Do you remember Boobquake?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, with the mountain, and then they're like, "It's all your fault. You flashed the mountain."
And to support what you're saying, God often says, there's more than one God in here, but often says that he will punish people and for generations afterward. That's how pissed off he can get. I'm going to punish you and all your children,
Yeah, and what's really I find interesting about that is that that was certainly a common theology, I suppose, but someone like Ezekiel, which is like a very standout kind of prophet, very heavily disagreed with that. He railed against the idea that you will be punished for the sins of your father, stuff like that. So it really depends on which strand you kind of followed. But of course, with Ezekiel, he wouldn't have felt the need to mention something like that unless there were people who did accept that.
Even in the law, it says children shall not be punished for the sins of their fathers, but then it also says, for the Lord your God is a jealous God, punishing the sins of them that hate me unto the third and fourth generation, but showing love unto 1,000 generations of them that love me and are called by my name. So God is radically inconsistent in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
I
also
like to think
applies.
he's got you covered no matter how you slice it. It's like
Yeah.
there's a verse out there for you, whether you're a murderer or a savior. It's
Yeah. Like in the New Testament, even they would bring people to Jesus. I forget what the affliction of the person was, and they said who sinned, his mother or his father.
The cripple at the pool of Siloam.
Yeah.
Well done.
So like that idea was still there, that they would punish people, and Jesus said neither. He's that way because to glorify God, so he could meet me and I could show you, look, I healed you, you know.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, that's way better.
Yeah, that's why he lived his life as a cripple. Why doesn't
heard-
Jesus understand things like congenital defects?
Well, because it's
Clearly,
demons,
it was just-
Aaron.
Oh yes,
all
the
demons.
demons, yes. Or his evil in a past life. Wait, no, that's the other thing. Never mind. Not that one.
Yeah.
So Runender says, Sodom happens to have a wonderful thrash metal band. The singer took the name.
I think it means to,
Angel
it
River.
happens to be, Aaron, not has a.
Happens to be.
Happens
That
to
would
be.
be a
Yeah.
wonderful thrash metal band. Yeah,
Have you
that
guys?
would be.
No. Yeah. Sodom's actually a very good band. Very, very real, good band, I would say. Yeah. Sodom.
Nice.
Very good.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
So
For
moving
the sake
on.
of the wonderful thrash metal band, will you save them, Lord?
Verse 26. The Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare it for their sake. Spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again. Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for a lack of 5 people?
I just love the way he just goes Dobby the house elf. And says, no, I am nothing. I'm the scum on the bottom of your shoe. But since I'm talking to you, let's just keep going. And it's
It's also
if I
grovelly.
find 45 there, he said, I will not destroy it. Once again, he spoke to him. What if only 40 are found there? He said, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. But what if only 30 could be found there? He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 people there. Abraham said, now that I've been so bold as to speak with the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there? He said, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. God is omniscient. Right?
Yeah.
And he's
I would
being
like-
bartered down.
I would like to point out, though, Abraham is the original Jew. I mean, I'm not going to trope, but Jews do barter. That is what they do. It's part of their heritage, and clearly it goes all the way back to the beginning. They come by it honestly.
Yep.
It reminds me of the life of Brian, where he's haggling over the gold.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes.
I do apologize that I was channeling Topol for that.
So I wanted to check why why 10? Why not less than 10? So I have several explanations. First, Rashi explains why Abraham did not plead for less than 10. He said, for a smaller number, he did not plead because he knew already of 2 instances where less than 10 had failed to save the wicked. He said to himself, in the generation of the flood, there were 8 righteous people, Noah, his sons, and their wives, and they could not save the generation. But for 9, in association with God, he had already pleaded, but had found no acceptance. So that's Rashi. And now Chazal in Bereshit Rabbah 49:13, they are given 2 more reasons for only 10. The first is so that there might be enough for an assembly of righteous men to pray on behalf of them all. And Abraham thought there were 10 people there: Lot, his wife, his 4 daughters, and 4 sons-in-laws.
So just one more time for clarification before we move on to the next chapter. You said that there was there was some correction of the scribes,
Yes,
because it originally said that there's the 3 men. The men go down to Sodom, and the Lord remained standing. And then, of course, we in the next chapter we start with the 2 angels.
No. The Kunz of Flame was that that Abraham was standing before God. It was corrected from God was standing before Abraham.
Exactly. So I mean, God was standing before Abraham, and that would mean, of course, that God was also sitting under the tree and eating and getting his feet
Maybe
washed.
it was just phrasing about priority there. There is a lot of like that whole I'm dust and ashes and that kind of sort of that's a bit of a social construct at the time, this hyper unnecessary modesty that is found in many cultures in certain times and places. With Abraham, I've spoken to Jewish people who said these are 2 separate stories. Christians smush them together. The 3 men are prophets who just went on their way, and God and the angels are a separate instance altogether. It's, to be honest, a lot of this is clearly mashups from previous writings. So who knows? There's not really an original version.
I think God and the angels were Sodom cover band. Sodom, the metal band.
And then Jimmy Snow comments. Jimmy Snow, it says, "Is this where I find the blasphemy?"
Yes!
I really wanted him to clarify this one.
And Jimmy, the sodomy.
We're getting to that.
Yeah.
We've been edging from that for a while.
Yeah. So we are in verse. So we have arrived in chapter 19, and that means that I open my beer.
Yeah.
I am out of rum.
I thought you were going to say, and so I opened my fly. Ooh, sodomy.
Like,
Naughty,
this is
naughty
an
boy.
example too of the inconsistencies and plot holes in the stories in the Bible, because I mean, Moses, he couldn't hardly look at God, and his hair turned white, and here's Abraham talking to him or coming up to him. I mean, like you're saying,
lunch with him,
like maybe God speaking to him directly through the angels. I don't know. Like, I don't know if you saw Alita Battle Angel, where the guy could mic into other people and start talking.
If it's the biblically accurate angels from Ezekiel, my hair might turn white too. Oren, did you grab more booze? Because I think I might need to grab more booze.
The biblically accurate angels are fairly terrifying, but then they get more terrifying in pseudepigraphal and apocryphal stuff, where they're just great big balls of fire. Their eyes are fire, their wings are fire,
all
their
eyes
biggest
and
planets. Like, the descriptions are kind of nuts.
Like,
why are their wings covered in eyes?
The jinn are made of fire.
It's also
yes.
It's
God made man of earth, angels of light, and the jinn of fire.
But it's also funny to think that these, like, if you think of the biblically accurate angels, these are the people who went into Sodom, who they said, "Oh, we fancy those." Look at that thing with all the eyes. I want to get my dick in that.
Don't do it in the eyeball, kids. It's not worth it.
sodomy's in the eye of the beholder.
That was disgusting.
I hope
So-
not literally.
Sorry,
Here, let me
I'm-
wipe your tears. Oh, those are not tears, are
Aaron,
they?
Aaron, don't kink shame.
Okay. So I made a small introduction to chapter 19, basically detailing the sins of Sodom as explained by rabbinical commentators and interpreters. So there are basically, you can sum up to 3 types of sins. So the first is the obvious one, which is fornication and sexual immorality. Nachmanides, in his commentary to Leviticus 18:3, said that the people of Canaan, not just Sodom, were doing, quote, forbidden sexual relationships. And according to Midrash Tanchuma, basically the reason that Sodom was burned down is because of they committed acts of sexual immorality. So that's one thing, and we will soon see in the chapter the sexual problems. Right. The second sin is wickedness. So Ezekiel 16:49-50 reads, Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. And there are several stories by rabbinical sources about the wickedness of Sodom. One story resembles the Procrustean bed from, I think it was the Greek mythology. This is from Sanhedrin 109b. Quote, they had beds on which they would lay their guests. When a guest was longer than the bed, they would cut him. And when a guest was shorter than the bed, they would stretch him.
Wasn't that the same story they used for the giant in the Og King of Bashan? That seems to be a popular trope, that there's a giant with a weird bed that will either cut off your head or stretch you on a rack. I was actually, you stole my Ezekiel reference that I was also going to say. But I do think it's funny that Ezekiel, because sodomy obviously has become a term associated with any manner of unconventional sex act, depending on who you're talking to. It could mean only anal sex, or it could mean anything but missionary intercourse between a heterosexual married couple.
Well, that's the thing. They wanted to initiate
Nobody through a sheet that nobody enjoys.
Here in Texas and in a number of other places, Republicans tried to pass anti-sodomy laws. And I think that they would have worked until they realized that sodomy also includes oral sex.
I think that
they didn't want to give up blowjobs, and that's but it's true. But here it says that they were arrogant, that they were selfish, that they were unconcerned with the needy, that they abandoned the poor. These are actual societal
Republican
problems. Well, yeah, exactly. They were Republicans, but the only thing Republicans care about is that you have sex in a way that makes them feel icky, and they find out about it.
I wasn't done with my introduction,
Sorry.
but
There's more.
I wanted to mention that in Israeli law, Sodom Act is basically rape by anal sex. So,
we can ban that.
Rape by anal sex or by oral sex. Okay, so I'll continue on. There is another story about their wickedness. Quote, there was a young woman who will take bread out to the poor people in a pitcher, so the people of Sodom will not see it.
You told that. It was Lot's daughter. You told that story already.
This is a different one.
This is a different one.
This is a different
Yeah,
one.
this is a different one from a different source.
Sorry.
The matter was revealed, and they smeared her with honey and positioned her on the wall of the city, and the hornets came and consumed her. Not
Like
so
they do.
different now, is it?
Did they? So did they use the honey to stick her to the wall, like glue?
She
And
must have been very light.
and the
tasty.
third
And the
third
hornets
sin-
devoured her. I have to just process that image for a while too.
Yeah.
Imagine
And-
how the hornets take really tiny bites.
Right?
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
unless they were
Okay.
like the dreaded piranha hornets, then it would be a whole different thing.
Yeah.
It was the
I'm-
African
Let's
killer
not
bee.
let's not make up animals for this, okay? Tomer, please continue.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I was interrupting, but okay. So the third sin, which is very relevant to the day, is the sin of pride. This was also seen during the Nine Kings War. According to Midrash Bamidbar Rabba 9, quote, the people of Sodom were not proudful in front of God, but for a favor which influenced them. And also, according to Rabbi Ovadia Sforno, who is a 16th century Italian commentator, who commentating on Deuteronomy 32:32, they boast about their secure and unthreatened existence, concerning themselves exclusively with physical gratifications, just as had the people of Sodom. And also, according to Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, another Aggadic Midrashic work on the Torah from the 8th and 9th century, chapter 25, describing the rich people of Sodom, quote, they did not trust in the shadow of their creator, but they trusted in the multitude of their wealth, for wealth thrusts aside its owners for the fear of heaven. So
let me get this straight, Tomer.
Yes.
So the sins were deviant sex, feeding the poor, and being smug about it. And for that, they are history's greatest monsters and must be destroyed.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, or killing the people that feed the poor. That's more of a Republican thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
Release the hornets!
Kicker White Lion for 50 Czech kroner says, so is Peter Jackson's representation of Sauron, specifically the eye, a biblically accurate angel?
Once again, Peter Jackson has shown us the way.
It is a biblically accurate part of an angel, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, flaming eye.
Flaming eyes,
sort
yep.
of.
Mm-hmm.
And then Native Atheist says, David Fitzgerald sounds familiar. Has he written books?
Oh, no way.
Oh,
Could be.
Without showing off how supple your spine is, this is the moment to toot your own horn.
In fact, as Native Atheists point out, I have written a book or two, and I'm writing a book as we speak, which I can't
quickly run through your titles, sir.
Okay, there's Nailed, 10 Christian myths that show Jesus never existed at all. There's The Mormons. There's a 3-part book, Jesus, Mything, and Action, which is sort of the follow-up to Nailed. And am I forgetting any? And I'm working on 2 right now. One is on sex and violence in the Bible, and the other is on the evolutionary stages of all religions and how all their prophets and founder figures seem to be completely made up. # just saying. So, and as soon as we get done with this podcast, I'm going to get right back to work on that and hopefully have that book done by the end of the year. Knock on wood. So we will see. Yeah.
Marcus Metzler for €5 says, when I first heard about people doing sodomy, I was shocked because in German, sodomy means bestiality.
Yeah.
I think that's something Abraham's people are more likely to have engaged in, as they didn't have a city and they just had a lot of goats and sheep and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, banging your neighbor's wife is a lot harder if you have no neighbors.
Well, that's why
they did say don't covet your neighbor's ass. Yeah, that's true.
Damn it! I was going to make that joke.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, continuing the reading because we're serious scholars here. That's what we're doing. We're reading.
That's what we do.
Beginning at chapter 19. The 2 angels arrive because suddenly there's 2 of them.
Oh, they're angels now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
There were 3 men before, but now there's 2 angels, and somehow
It's like Arya taking off her face.
Yeah. So I wanted to comment on this, but Aaron, I think you should finish it first. So.
Okay, I'll finish the first verse. Arrived in Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gateway up to the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground.
Okay.
My lords, he said, please turn aside.
I wanted to comment, Aaron.
Okay, sorry.
So in the last chapter, they were called men. So according to Bereshit Rabbah 50, chapter 50 and 2, when God was above them, they were men. But as soon as he departed from them, they assumed the form of angels.
What does this mean?
They grew extra eyes and stuff.
Right?
The whole point of going to Sodom was to go incognito as humans so that they would, look normal. You don't go into spies' territory dressed in your 6 wings with eyes all over them out.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was gonna make another joke, but it's like, no, just hush your mouth, Dave. Yeah, let's go.
So it might
Okay.
be the case that because they had different classes of angels, right? Then they all had different looks. So this could be a different class of angels that looks more like our current like artistic representation, but
It would
this
have
would be
to be
the
because
only.
when you think about it, Lawrence, all the other depictions of angels are horrifying, Lovecraftian
Yeah,
nightmares.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, it
so
would
I've
have to
also
be.
I've also commented previously that these angels, according to Chazal, are Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel. So I don't know what the representation is. So
Well, you
Okay,
never
so
know what.
All I know.
originally, when they were standing on the top of the mountain, they were Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. But now they've become Big Bird. Now they've got the whole wings thing going.
See, if they were Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, I would see why most of the city wanted to bone them. Never once. I don't have a dick. But if the Eye of Sauron showed up, my first thought would not be, I want to stick it in that. No.
yeah.
But,
don't
but
know
Matt
what-
Damon, you'll reconsider. Get
I
thee
can
behind
see
me,
that.
Satan.
Silly, you know I'm always on top.
For whatever reason, I'm feeling particularly blasphemous at the moment.
Oh God.
Okay, so the next verse number 2. My lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. See, this is why they needed to invent shoes.
Yeah.
Everywhere they go, they have to wash their feet. Okay.
And consider that
No,
it's
they-
very hot.
Oh yes.
The desert, yeah.
Mm,
Have you ever walked like 30 feet in the desert?
Yes.
Personally, no.
I
I
lived
grew
in the
up in the
desert.
desert. You can't
I'd rather
walk
not.
anywhere in the desert. I mean, everything
So did
is
I.
covered in
Well,
everything
there wasn't
is covered in
climate
sharp,
change.
poisonous spines.
whoa.
And now, there's also clay with, spikes of half-dead brambles sticking out of it and sharp rocks
And it's just hot.
and occasionally scorpions.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah,
Maybe they
plenty of
were wearing
scorpions,
sandals.
yes.
Maybe they're wearing
Uh,
sandals. That's why their feet were dirty.
Yeah, so you could still actually have protection from the ground, but your feet
Yeah.
would get dirty if you're wearing sandals.
And you
Yeah,
roasted
very
it.
much
There's,
so.
there's one of God's failed designs. He gave these other animals hooves.
Yeah.
But us, he gave us these tender little tootsies. And we have
Perfect
to,
like
design.
fawns.
And
Yeah,
also,
goat hooves.
this is a promised land as well. This is the place that he actually picked for them to inhabit.
The land flowing with milk and honey.
Go live in
That's
this
more the
land where you
northern
can.
part.
Not
Don't
even
look-
Truth Social would describe that land as flowing with milk and honey.
Mm.
In this part of the Bible, it's
As a
filled
man-
with.
Oh,
As a person who lives in the land of milk and honey, I have no comment.
Okay, so the
Right.
angels answered, no, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. Because, these are angels. No, you
Yeah.
got to come to, I've got a nice place. I've got rooms. I've got a sofa.
I wash your feet.
That, I'm in the desert.
in the King James version, that verse is, now he pressed upon them greatly.
Yeah. This
Oh,
is,
lot.
this is this is a more
You
this
try
is
them.
this is quite accurate to
Is
what
that a
the Hebrew
banana
writing
in your
says.
pocket, or you're just happy to see me?
Come home
That-
with me, sexy
This is
angels.
the custom in desert societies to feed people and
mm.
share your food.
But not to try them.
This is also a
Hospitality.
custom. Yeah, this is also a custom in Bedouin society as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he
Well, and
pressed
this-
against them. He
Well-
pressed against them, and they said, is that your gun? He said, no, I wear a shoulder holster.
Uh-huh.
Before,
This isn't
okay, so,
Texas.
but he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast and they ate. What?
Okay, I wanted to comment on this.
Yes.
So the original verse here is he baked matzot, which is the if you're aware, if you don't know, this is like the traditional food, the traditional bread in Passover. So according to Rashi, he made them because it was Passover, which doesn't make sense because the Exodus didn't happen.
Yeah,
Matzot,
Rashi.
he was ahead of
But-
his time that a lot.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a pothole.
but the point is that matzot in the Bible are made quickly. So perhaps Lot was unprepared for guests to arrive, so he made he made matzot very quickly. And in the
Abraham and
Exodus,
enough
Sarah
time
weren't either.
Hmm?
Abraham and Sarah weren't either, but he went out and had somebody slaughter a calf.
Yeah.
they already
Yeah.
had food. Like, yeah.
Yeah, he had 2 gallons of flour and
Yeah.
Sitting
baked like a-
around.
No,
and
not
baked
2
a
gallons.
cake the size of a chair.
It wasn't 2 gallons, Aaron. It was 6 gallons. So
Wow.
6 gallons. Okay,
That's a
so
lot of
Oh
cake.
yeah, it was 3 sets of 2 gallons. So the point is, these were very
we
hungry
brought out a
angels.
3-layer wedding cake and said, "Here,
Yeah.
eat this."
yeah.
On top of this
Oh,
whole calf.
You know what? We're getting
don't
hung
need
up,
all
we're
of it.
getting
I'm
hung
gonna
up,
be-
hung up on the whole. We're getting hung up on the flatbread issues of the story and not getting into the good parts, which are coming
Yes.
right up.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well,
Flat
let me
bread,
just finish.
made bread.
And if you eat all 72 ounces of this calf plus all the flatbread up, then you get it free.
So I do want to point out that the chapter we had read previously, so chapter 18, and this chapter have like a lot of verbal similarities. And I'm currently looking over the Hebrew texts, and while I can't understand any of it, I can see I can tell if 2 letters are the same. So like that I can tell. There are a lot of verbal parallels between these two. So I think it would be likely that they would have been written together, especially that first part of chapter 18. Because the big some of the differences are, of course, one takes place at night, the other takes place out in like the afternoon. So yeah, it definitely seems like these two would have
The
circulated
similarities establish clearly that, Abraham is a righteous man. He shows hospitality to strangers. Lot is a righteous man. He shows hospitality to strangers. You have an echo of their behaviors. Lot doesn't kill a calf because he's in a city and not hurting, a huge flock of animals around, but he does prepare them bread and do, wash their feet and press them in the same way that Abraham did. So yeah, it's a clear echo of a theme, and righteousness is seen as, hospitality is the first signal of righteousness in a person.
Well, sure.
And
If
by
you live in an
contrast,
environment that sometimes you might not have supplies, but other people do, sharing is like a necessity.
Sharing is
Yeah.
caring.
Sharing is caring.
Well,
It is.
sharing is the only reason any of you are alive.
Yes.
It's also
So
true.
hospitality is very important.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
based
we're
on
gonna find
that,
out more
I
about-
hate sharing because I hate being alive.
We
gonna find out more
we
about
shared a
sharing
hookah with Lawrence though.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
The kind you smoke, not a prostitute.
Uh,
Just clarifying.
hey, Aaron, what about
Yeah.
the men of Sodom? What kind of sharing do they do?
Well, I was going to say that we're about to find out more
Uh-huh.
about sharing when we hear about Lot's daughters.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And
That's
we've
gone
just
too
been
far.
joined by King Xerxes. Thank you for showing up.
Hello.
Xerxes, hey.
You came at the right moment. It's
Hello,
about to
did.
get. It's about.
We
to
were
get
talking
hot.
about matzos.
Yeah, you came at the right moment, and that's very rarely said.
And he's gone.
That's what the angel said.
Okay, so Sean Alexander for $10 says, thank you very much for that. He says, when people ask me what religion I am, I tell them I am non-delusional.
I like it. I'm taking that.
Oh, I'm embarrassed that I never thought of that. Okay, and then M. Doug says for £5. Thank you very much for that. He says the story of Lot pimping out his daughters is a screwed up moral tale about the importance of hospitality. Forget the chattel daughter's involvement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
There
we're
is
going to get
actually
more into that in a moment.
there is actually an
Well, you-
interesting commentary later on. So
You stop acting like women are people. Women aren't people.
We're history's greatest monsters.
Hey,
You know, I
So
mean,
there's-
Abraham offered, he killed a calf. Lot offered his daughters. It's the same
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So, what verse am I on?
verse
Four.
4. Verse 4.
Okay, verse 4. So before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They
Yeah.
called to
I
Lot.
wanted to comment on this. So Rashbam, who was the grandson of Rashi, comments that this verse is intended to show that there wasn't a single righteous man from the 10 which Abraham wanted to save.
There's got to have been at least one old guy who couldn't get it up anymore who did not have time for this shit.
So what about the children and the women? These are just the men. Surely there were more than 20 women or children that were
Children
righteous.
aren't people
They
either.
don't
Yeah.
count.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This is the verse speaks about male people. So
I don't know. In a town that's been reputed to be entirely gay, it would seem that the women were relatively safe.
One would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would think.
Okay, so what verse am I at? No,
Five.
Just verse 4 and verse 5. Okay, so they called to Lot. Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we may have sex with them.
He didn't
So-
say that.
Give me
Okay,
that baby
so-
booty.
Say that.
so I also wanted to say that in the Hebrew Bible, the phrase that is used to have sex with them is to know them. Okay.
It's the
Uh-huh.
same in the King James. And sometimes they'll put know them carnally.
No, them in the biblical sense.
No,
I would
them.
like to know
so
you
they
more.
just
Astrid,
want to
did you know
extend
what
a
I
hand.
mean?
They just want to
Yeah.
extend a hand and say, "Hi, pleased to meet you. My name is Rob."
Hey, nudge, nudge, wink,
Nice
wink,
to know
say no
ya.
more.
And today you will die of snoo snoo. I'm glad that everybody has heard that joke. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. They don't
Nice.
say have sex with. I mean, this is pretty explicit on this.
Is to know. Yeah. So, but there are similar verses in the Bible that has the expression to know them. For example, Genesis 4:1, Adam knew Eve and she became pregnant. So, basically, the use of the word to know basically means to know the body, to know her body. So
The tautness of the angels, anus.
Okay.
Let me
So,
know
okay,
how
hey,
tall
do you
the anus
know-
are.
Do you know Eve? Oh, yes, I know her very well.
I've been inside her.
Okay, so Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and then you can do whatever you like to them because they're just girls and they don't matter. They don't
Yeah,
have feelings, they're
so-
not people.
yeah,
They're just
so
my family. The women in my family are just commodities, except for my wife.
Oh,
She's a
God.
condiment."
yeah.
Uh,
Okay. First thing, I apologize. I've interrupted Aaron. I need to be aware of this. But I wanted to point out that some commentators, like Nachmanides and Bachya Ben Asher, have denounced Lot's proposal. For example, Nachmanides writes, "From the praise of this man Lot, we have come to his disgrace. He made every effort on behalf of his guests in order to save them because they came under the shadow of his roof. But he is ready to appease the men of the city by abandoning his daughters to prostitution. This bespeaks nothing but an evil heart, for it shows that the matter of prostitution of women was not repugnant to him, and that, in his opinion, he would not be doing such great injustice to his daughters. It is for this reason that our rabbis have said," and he quotes from Tanchuma Vayera 12, "It is the custom of the world that a man fights to the death for the honor of his daughters and his wife, to slay or to be slain. But this man hands over his daughters for dishonor. Said the Holy One, blessed be he, to him, it is for yourself that you keep them."
hmm.
Well, this is interesting because Lot, like Noah, in both of these situations, God has chosen the one guy so righteous that he's worth saving. But in both cases, it's a drunk who is molesting their own children and blaming them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's not righteous at all.
Yeah, but then
No,
neither
he's
is
absolute
Noah.
Garbage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it just curses his sons and their descendants to eternal slavery.
Yeah. So then he says, I mean, let me bring my daughters out to you so you can do whatever you like with them, but don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Are the daughters not under the protection of your roof, you sad bastard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say
Anyway.
this for Judaism, though. They have a tradition of arguing with the text. They have scholars who will say, no, Lot was a dirtbag for doing this. The particularly fundamentalist and evangelical Christian perspectives are that we have to find this to be the right thing to do. And let me tell you, as a young girl who read the Bible far earlier than is appropriate, this was very disturbing to have to think this was right in any sense.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, when you were a girl reading this, I mean, did you have to like consult because I'm constantly having to ask people when I was a kid, what does this mean? And I was never able to get answers. I mean, like, what the hell is a firmament, Mom? My mother couldn't tell me what a firmament is, right? But I mean, how do you come across? I mean, so are you turning to someone and say, hey, is he just telling people to rape his daughters? We're not taking them to be. His daughters are not 18 and 19 years old. Not in this culture.
No,
right?
They're maybe 16 if you're lucky.
16? They would be old maids.
I said if you're lucky. But yeah, I would try and consult, because here's the thing. I had listened to and read all the stories of the Bible in all the kid-approved versions before I read the Bible. And there's only one story that they were not able to do an edited version of, and that's the one at the end of Judges. In the version that was presented to me as a child, these people were merely violent to strangers. And so it cut out the bit about the daughters. But then when I actually got to the text, I would try and ask, but it's deeply horrifying and you almost don't want to think about it. And then people are like, yeah, it's really messed up, but he had taken them under his protection. So it was like the best of a bad situation kind of an excuse.
Okay, so
which I'm like,
taking him under protection. Wow. You just took two strangers. Let's never mind that they're fucking angels and that either one of them can lay waste to the entire city with their magic in their finger. Let's ignore that for the moment. And let's ignore that angels can do whatever the hell they want. They could probably take all these rapists and enjoy it and wear them all out. These are fucking angels. Okay? Well, this guy just offered his kids. And realistically, they would have been, if this was a real story, these kids in this culture would have been 11 or 12.
And they would have been raped to death on their father's doorstep, as happens to the concubine.
Now, I gotta give credit that the Hebrew culture says, yeah, this is fucked up. And I also have to point out that you're right, that the Christian culture will completely throw away all sense of morality.
Yeah.
They will, well, God is just, in every horrible, evil, indispensable, despicable thing that God does is just because God did it. That's like when Richard Nixon said that it's not illegal when the president does it.
Yeah.
And this is something you have to understand, particularly about Protestants. Protestants don't worship God quite so much as they worship the Bible. Their entire understanding of God is based on the idea that God wrote this book and God is perfect. So if it says it in the book and it is associated either with God or with any of God's special favorites that he has declared righteous for any reason whatsoever, it must inherently have been either a good thing or perhaps just a bad thing, but the best thing he could do under the circumstances.
Because his hands were tied.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a good point.
None of the options were good, so he did one shitty thing.
Sorry.
I read the Bible too when I was young, and I would go to my father when I had questions like this. And, it's exactly what Lilith is saying. It's like, if that's what the Bible says, who are you to question God, basically? Like he probably had a good reason or something, and it's just,
There was a good reason to have your
Yeah.
children raped. Yes.
I'll give my dad this. He was uncomfortable with it. And there was a certain amount of, I don't know, this was just a bad situation all around kind of a thing. You know, I don't think I ever had the courage. I don't remember having the courage to ever ask him if he would sacrifice me like Abraham did to Isaac. But
Or
with
Judah
this
did to his
one,
daughter. Yeah.
yeah,
One of the
well, no,
problems that I had as a kid when I tried to read the Bible and I would ask my family, what does this mean? Is that I'm the only one in my family who ever cracked the fucking thing open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all too
Lilith,
Fair
you
common.
enough.
looked like you had more to say.
We just went to a free thought convention and there were protesters there, and this woman they had these signs of we're all going to hell, and the guy even said vegans were going to hell, and it's like, what the heck did they do? And so I tried to talk to this woman and she just kept yelling at me, are you a lesbian? You know, I'm like, that's irrelevant, you know. And it's like they're very legalistic. They try to stick to every word of the Bible, even though the words of the Bible are inconsistent.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, and
I don't
then
mean to
there's
I don't mean to detract,
there's
but I mean the people that we ran into in Kentucky last weekend also said that there's a lot of lies in the Bible, so they completely divorced. They're arguing for the Bible, but also divorced from the Bible. So they found a way
Wow.
that you can't find anything in the Bible to
Wow.
condemn them. Like
Yeah.
when the Bible says that you can't call someone a fool lest ye be damned, right? Well, they're out there calling us fools, and
Yeah.
that doesn't apply to them because that's just one of the lies in the Bible. What the,
I've frequently told Christians, "Oh, I didn't realize you were so angry at me. You were willing to go to hell over it. That's quite remarkable."
Mm.
Exactly.
Interesting
That's what I
choice.
told
I
her.
respect it.
Basically,
But
yep. I told her,
This is
"Are you
actually-
telling me I'm going to hell? Because the Bible says you're going to be judged with the same measure that you judge other people.
Mm.
So
I'm
you
guessing
judging
she
me? I'm
didn't
going
like
to hell."
hearing that.
It's the
No,
same
she
sort of.
didn't.
It's the same kind
This
of.
is
Sorry. It's the same kind of train of thought as people who say that you get the apologists who say that the Bible was perfect in the original writing. The version we've got has been corrupted.
that we don't. I had that from a minister who said we only have to believe it was infallible in their original version that we don't have. And I just looked at him and said, so X can't be false, but X is false, so I have to believe X1. That's not how real things work. But
Yeah.
I have to make the point that with Protestants particularly, because of their worship of the Bible and because it is inconsistent, this is the difference between liberal and conservative Christians. The liberal Christian will gravitate towards those parts of the Bible that they love and that inspire them. And the conservative Christian will gravitate towards those parts of the Bible that they fear and that inspire anger and hatred. And those are the parts they will justify.
Yeah.
They hate their God hates all the same people they do. They don't
Which
like
is pretty much
lesbians.
everyone. I'm actually reminded of something Colonel Ingersoll used to tell of a woman who, a Scotch Presbyterian, who, someone was discussing her theology with her, and they said, "My dear, if your theology is correct, then nobody but you and your husband will be saved." And she said, "I didn't so sure about John."
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out. I'm glad that you pointed out that Protestants worship the Bible because of this weird interpretation that they have that the Bible is the Word of God. So if you disprove the Bible, you disprove God.
Yeah.
Now, my view of God, I mean, I'm an atheist. My view of God is that God is independent of the Bible or the Quran. You could disprove all of the Holy Scriptures, and that wouldn't disprove God. But for the Protestant, if you disprove the Bible, they don't become Jewish or they don't become Muslim. They become atheist because it is the Bible that they worship, not God. They can't distinguish doctrine from deity.
That's why Ken
Fortunately for
Hamlin
them,
answers in
you can-
Genesis says that if Genesis is not literally true, then the part with Jesus and redemption are not true either. So we have to take it literally, no matter what evidence there is to the contrary.
The only thing they've ever gotten right. Yeah. If the Bible's history is not true, neither its theology. Yes, you're exactly
So we've
right.
got another chat that I have to read. This is Bucky the Beaver points out, how can it be statistically that every man in Sodom is a gay rapist. I mean, at least it explains why Lot's married daughters are still virgins.
God.
Well, Sodom is statistically, Sodom is the exception.
Yeah, I had the same argument with somebody in my family when they told me honestly, there was somebody in my family that I've known my whole life tells me that, but black people commit all the crimes, all of them.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
I'm like, that's not even
physically
possible.
Jinx.
Some of those crimes were committed by our white family, and you know that.
That wasn't white people though. You know, they're just.
Oh my goodness.
They're so
Those were
binary in their
true
thinking.
white people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that wasn't Bucky the Beaver's comment. That was, oh my gosh, look at this name, Silvio. I hope I didn't.
Silvio George Pantelimon.
Silvio George Pantelimon. Thank you.
Pantelimon.
All right, so continuing our reading, because we are serious scholars, we will get through this.
I don't know.
Verse 9.
I don't know.
Get out of our way, the gay mob said. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. When they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door.
Angel powers activate.
I've just got this image of them kind of like fumbling around for like anything that resembles a boat, basically.
These are angels. They're pretty close to fucking genies, right?
Yeah. But you have to think it's interesting that they're still trying to find the door. Like, you're in a huge mob, you've all been struck blind, but damn it, you wanted that angel ass and you're gonna get it.
I'm all geared up now. I can't go without it.
I don't know, the way you put that, Lilith, you wanted that angel ass.
It's like the story in South Park where they want to rape the children because they have some sort of special powers. So it's like the fountain of youth.
It's like, I don't care
yeah.
if I've been struck blind. I don't care if I can't see the door. I don't care if I've completely lost my sense of direction and I have no idea who's standing beside me. I'm getting that angel ass.
Yeah,
And here's the thing. They all get struck blind. They can't find the door. So the rest of the story, they're all just still mobbed around there in the house going whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah, like we know
It never says they left the building in a dazed, lust-filled, muddle.
This is a mob. This is a mob of men. They're all gay. How could they tell whose ass they got a hold of?
That doesn't mean that they're gay just because they want to rape a man. People who are primarily heterosexual rape men too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't mean to quibble about subtleties here, but I mean
It's not.
This is Sodom.
Yeah.
These are by definition sodomites.
Yeah.
Oh, it could be a dominance thing. Every man that comes into the city has to be shown their place at the bottom of the hierarchy, which means Lot already had this.
We're also talking about the Bible.
Bottom.
So subtleties and nuance do not really apply here. Everything is pretty much
but alpha
one-dimensional.
male egotism does.
Yes. It's about power.
See,
So-
I do disagree with that. The nuance is very important, but specifically for this, it wouldn't change the morality of anything that's happening.
Sure.
True.
I grant that in real life there is nuance to this, but everybody's cast in a one-dimensional light in the Bible.
Yeah.
So
True.
So Nephilim Slade for $10, thank you, says, "Hey Aaron, I'm a big fan from Louisville, but I sadly didn't get to see you when you were here. Were there any sites that you really enjoyed?" Sorry to take that off on a sidetrack, but no, I wasn't in Louisville but like 2 days, and all I remember was like everywhere we went was bourbon, because it's Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
might be
Not
about
the worst
something.
way to remember a place.
Why am I agreeing with you? I'm not in the U.S. Okay.
You want to be in the U.S. to appreciate bourbon.
Mm.
Yeah. So The two men said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here."
I would like to
Sons
comment
or
on this.
daughters?
Yeah, I would like to comment on this. Lot doesn't have sons. So Rashi comments that these are the sons of Lot's married daughters. And Ibn Ezra comments that these are the sons-in-laws who are like sons to Lot.
Okay, because it's the closest
The ones
he
who
ever
were
got.
pledged to be married to the daughters that he was going to throw to the rape
Yeah,
mob.
they are
the
like
thing
his
is-
sons.
The thing is, so in the next verse, we're gonna get more on that. But for this one, it just looks like they're asking like a general question, like, is there anybody else? Get them out. So it doesn't really seem like they're making a statement about it necessarily.
Yeah,
but
get your family.
Yeah. But we do get more about it in the next verse.
Yeah, and I don't want to clarify, just in case anybody was confused by what I said when I'm talking about the nuance here, that I understand that there's a whole lot more depth to human sexuality, and that the stereotype of gays being versus the sodomized. I'm not even talking about real life homosexuality. I'm talking about this fucking story, which is very different than real life.
Oh yeah, this has nothing to do with reality.
This is angel sex. This has nothing to do with.
That's kind of turning me on. Angel sex. I kind of like that.
Who hasn't wanted to rape an angel from now and then?
Yeah, it depends which of the Ninja Turtles painted the angel.
So get them out. Get your family out of the city. Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. Because God is omniscient, and he's just a spirit, and he doesn't need physical representatives who are worried about being raped by a gang in the street somewhere. God can just say, you know what? You guys are bad. I'll just blink you out of existence. Or God could have just corrected their wrong, right? God has reason. God could reason with people. God can punish people effectively, but he doesn't do that. He sends physical beings to destroy them, because that's how people learn lessons. God is a very bad dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good takeaway.
So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. And they said, "You tried to throw our brides to the rape mob? The fuck is wrong with you?"
That they didn't know about, despite every man in the city being there.
Yeah, every man
except them, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sorry. We were standing there in the rape mob. We're blind right now.
We also think you're joking about the magic destroying the city.
Right.
Yeah. He said, "Hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy it." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking.
We thought you were joking, you jolly joker.
Yeah, what the hell is
crazy.
funny about that? Okay, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished."
I want to comment something. By the way, according to Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 25, Lot's wife has a name, and she's called Edith or Erith.
Her name is Edith.
According to Midrashic rabbinical scholars, yeah.
Okay. Eat it. It does. Lot also sometimes call her dingbat when they argue. So when
the days.
Oh,
when he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them.
Okay,
the Lord could have just spared his house. They could have been completely safe in his house. He could have blinked everybody else out. He could have blinked their house to the Bahamas, but that's not what he did. He had to lead them out of the city because he has very poor aim and very blunt weapons.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on this. And so the word hesitated more accurately would be lingered. Rashi comments that he lingered in order to save his property.
Not my favorite chair.
Yeah, which
he's
could have
trying
been,
to pack a few things so he can have something to live on. In other words,
No
Yeah,
time. no
God
time.
could have just pulled out his magical Uzi and killed the individuals in that crowd, right?
I'm
And he
I'm
didn't
going
even
to
have to kill them. He could banish them back to the Permian period and give them a nice talking to.
I'm going to use my Israeli accent for this. No, you use this to shoot them all with the. It's Uzi, it's Israel, so you know it's good. So yeah,
They were already all blind.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that-
very
that-
effective. You just shoot them. Don't worry, they are blind.
Yeah, and now the only kind of sexual molestation they can do is masturbation. And what's the cause? What does masturbation do? Makes you blind. You're already there.
Oh,
Bingo.
you're set. You're set.
And the really sad thing is they didn't even see those fireballs coming.
Oh,
So as soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives! Don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away."
I
But
want to
Lot
comment
said
on
to
this.
them, "Yes."
Sorry, there is a lot of comments on this.
No, I want to be clear. I appreciate your involvement in this show. I've found your commentary to be very valuable. So please go ahead.
I
Okay,
did too.
so
Right, I saw a comment. I'm sorry, Tomer.
Mhm.
That somebody was making their way out of Christianity, and that Tomer's commentary and insights are helpful to them.
aw, that's
Nice.
sweet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
welcome.
much. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about the don't look back. So why has he commented? Why was it commanded to not look back? So our favorite friend Rashi says, "You, aka Lot, sinned with them, but art saved through the merit of Abraham. It is not fitting that you should witness their doom whilst you yourself are escaping." And Rashbam, who is the grandson of Rashi, comments, "First of all, on account of their going to experience the anguish of seeing the destruction of their city. Secondly, in order not to afford them an opportunity to see the angels performing their destructive work as angels when there was no need for them to witness this. Watching divine beings in action and being saved by such spectacles requires divine intervention and should therefore be avoided."
I think there's two conflicting elements here. I mean, there's one, God destroys the city with fireballs because God is dramatic bitch. But there's also that God likes to put people in catch-22 situations where he tells them not to do something minor and stupid, and then if they accidentally do it, he can punish them because he's also a vindictive bitch.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and the wife looked back and got turned into a pillar of salt. Sure smacks of that funny pillar of salt that's in the desert. That's where blah 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 happened, and that's why we have a
You
pillar of
didn't
salt.
listen.
I wanted to talk about this, but we will get to this person
Ah.
because
Yeah,
it's
he
very
does, he
interesting
does
for
have
those
something
two.
for this.
Yeah,
We all know
they
it's
have
coming.
something.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Okay, so where am I at now? 18 is it?
17, I think. No, it's 18. Sorry, 18.
Yeah. But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me by sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look,
Be with you.
here is a town near enough to run to, and it's small. Let me flee to it. It's a very small town, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to him, that's not very clear. "Very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it. That is
God
why the
don't
town
touch
is
him,
called Zoar."
Yeah.
Tomer,
So
what the hell does Zoar mean?
okay. So Zohar. So in
Little.
verse 20, when they use the word to refer to it as a small, they use the word mitzoar, which is small. So, and I explained in a previous episode that Zoar may be derived from Zair, which is tiny. So from mitzoar it's a tiny. So the name
Mhm.
Zoar means tiny or small.
Yeah, that's what my notes say, that
Mhm.
Zoar means small. And we
Yeah.
saw the name mentioned in the earlier story where Abraham rescued the inhabitants of those cities that were in that area, including Sodom, Gomorrah, and whatever Zoar used to be called.
Bella.
Mhm.
It's
It was Bella.
Bella. Thank you.
Ken.
Okay, so they fled Las
I said
Vegas and went to
Ken.
Mayberry.
Yes. Yes.
By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he
And
overthrew
Gomorrah
those
said,
cities.
"Hey, what do we do? That was Sodomites."
I also think that I don't have it in my notes, but I think that Rashi comments that this was that God had rained down on Sodom, and then the rain turned into brimstone and fire.
Yeah, but
Science.
all of this speaks volcano, right?
Ah,
Oh, 100%. 100%. Or at the most, a meteor.
Well, there isn't.
You could
well,
hypothetically have a meteor.
I don't think there is a volcano. Well, I can't qualify this. I want to say that there isn't.
We can't
volcano.
find the volcano between Canaan and Israel or Israel either, but we know that the story of Moses and the talking bush and all of that and going up the mountain, and we know that that's based on a volcano somewhere.
Mount Ararat.
No, it's
No, Ararat is in
way
Turkey.
farther.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about someplace that, if I remember correctly, there was a number of people that said that story emanated from a chain of volcanoes that were actually in Saudi Arabia, and the pieces of that were added into the elements of this
I have
story.
no idea.
This feels like rationalizing after the fact because I don't know.
I've also heard of potential meteor or meteorite impacts that would have caused a great catastrophe somewhere, like not even
That's a
necessarily
huge
targeting
reach,
a
though.
specific city.
I mean,
Yeah, no, I know.
Elements of raining brimstone. That's not so much meteoric because you're going to have more isolated. Even with a big meteor, you're going to have more isolated impact. You know, like you might have like 3 or 4 noticeable impacts at most. But with a volcano,
yeah, well, you'd need something to break up and smash down all in a very enclosed area. But yeah, a volcano makes a lot more sense.
At the very least, it could just be an etiology about like why that region is like it is. They needn't have even had like a meteor strike or a volcano. They could say, well, we think this is what happened in the past. That's probably why it's like this.
It's a desert because of the smiting.
Yeah. That's what I am inclined to think too. That it's an after.
Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt.
Yeah, so this is of course meant to for the author to explain the barren Dead Sea region, the survival of Zoar, and the Salt Mountains.
Yeah, I have some comments on this, and this is an extensive. First off, before we show the picture, there is a story from Bereshit Rabbah 54 for why was she turned into a pillar of salt. So Rabbi Isaac said, a fierce quarrel broke out over the salt, for he, aka Lot, said to her, aka his wife, give these guests a little salt. To which she replied, do you want to introduce here that evil practice too? And so Rashi concludes, by salt she has sinned, and by salt she was punished. So
salt
is
a sin.
Yeah.
What a
there is
offer them
a ritual where they'll have red water and salt. I believe
there
it's
is
a Hebrew ritual now.
Still
where you have ritual washing of hands, and you have a little salt for flavor. Possibly this is a bit of cross-cultural miscommunication where, because salt, you also, if you spill salt, you summon a devil, you throw it over your left shoulder to get the devil away from you. Salt seems to have a lot of superstitions wrapped around it.
So okay,
things that are not normally listed when you look up sodium chloride.
No.
Yeah. So also Josephus, Clement of Rome, and Irenaeus claim to have seen the pillar of salt, and there actually exists a pillar of salt in Mount Sodom, which is located southwest of the Dead Sea. Peter, can you show the picture? Thank you very much. So this is Lot's wife.
Isn't she beautiful?
This is located in Mount. Yeah. So Amos Fomkin, who is a professor of geology at the Hebrew University who specializes in speleology, the study of caves, wrote an article in the Geological Study Society of America Bulletin 2009 titled Formation and Dating of a Salt Pillar in Mount Sodom, Dayapir, Israel. The abstract states, quote, contrary to earlier assumptions, which states that the salt pillar was formed by direct rainfall, the observed solutional notches and morphology of the neighboring chasm indicate that the salt pillar is due to a karstic cave that collapsed. The uppermost part of the cave still carried an underground ephemeral stream around 4,000 years ago, as indicated by 6 carbon-14 dates of wood washed into the highest cave level. The sudden collapse that left the isolated salt pillar was probably triggered by a catastrophic earthquake. The measured uplift rate, which is around 9.3, around plus or minus 3.5 millimeters a year, showed that when the pillar formed, it was much closer to the base of Mount Sodom. So there you go.
Ah, okay. So it would have been shorter and not, we wouldn't have to assume Lot's wife was a giantess when this initially became a myth.
So David's initial suspicion is correct that the pillar of salt maybe it's an explanation for this formation here.
I can kind of see a woman looking dramatically, like, you know, I can kind of see that.
Somebody
I'm
could
just
be
having a hard time understanding salt as a sin. Salt is used to make jerky. How can that be sin?
No,
Well, no, the salt isn't the sin.
the salt isn't sin. It was the act of the wife that has caused her to be a pillar of salt.
By refusing to give salt on the
Yes.
bread of the guests. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you like salt, do you? Well, here, you can be all the salt.
Yeah, because salt is even in the Bible. It's the what is it called? That's the flavor of life, or something. It's something like that in the Bible. The
Jesus gives a
phrase
whole
that they
speech about it.
Savor.
Yeah, he
but
does.
it's you know, because otherwise food would just first of all it would rot a lot of the time. So it was used for preservation, but also it made stuff taste good. So
Yeah. Well, so
Jesus said that like you should be the salt of the earth, and but if the salt is lost its savor, what good is it?
yeah, well then what they don't tell you is that Lot's wife went on and found another husband, Pepper.
And that was the origin of it.
Oh, no. She's not living with that guy in Phoenix. She's a pillar of salt out there. Yeah.
So Binary Me says, thoughts on how can it be moral to sit in heaven singing happy, clappy songs with Jesus while some of our friends are being tortured in hell? I always had that problem too. But people will tell us that they will be glad to be sitting in heaven and watching their loved ones being tortured.
I asked my father about this too, like because not necessarily Old Testament, but New Testament, like Protestants, Southern Baptists, they believe you don't come to the Father but through Jesus. So I'm like, what about people that never knew of Jesus, like Chinese? Because I'm half Vietnamese and have some Chinese ancestry, and he said without a hesitation that they would go to hell. I mean, because he has to believe everything literally. He's not necessarily a cruel man. They don't see themselves as cruel.
Yeah,
like God has some explanation for this.
But that's also the reason they came up with like the different layers of hell. So you had like the areas of hell where you'd go if you're like an unbaptized baby. So it's not too harsh. It's not like the lake of fire.
Yeah.
No, that like the first level where the righteous in Dante, where Virgil is and Homer and the righteous heathen. I think actually I have an important point to make on this, and this is that just as Protestants in particular don't worship God, they worship the Bible. They have specific meanings for words, and what Christians mean by good, virtue, righteousness, and all of that is actually completely meaningless. It's a totally arbitrary construct whereby everything that God does and is and says is good, and you have to fit your concept of good onto that structure on the basis of whatever elements of the Bible you've had brought up to you more particularly than others. So their concept, there is this, and I've heard this so many times, that hell is perfect justice. That seeing, and I've read it too, because I read theologians all the way back to the beginning, because I've been concerned, like, how old is some of this stuff? It goes all the way back. That the idea is that God's perfect justice will be demonstrated, and we will all be so impressed with the glory of his justice by burning tens of billions of innocent people forever and ever and ever and ever. But nobody's innocent because we've sinned against God, which doesn't make any sense because we can't hurt God. So it's impossible to sin against God. You can't hurt him. I can sin against you because I can hurt you.
But you can
I
hurt his
can't hurt God.
feelings.
I can back this up because we went to protest a Ken Ham homeschooling convention, and a Calvinist preacher wanted to have dinner with us, and so I asked him this question, like, how can a just God kill that many innocent people? And now, you know, Calvinists have a really much more restricted view of who's going to hell. Like, it's only like under 500,000.
There's a handful barely worth saving. Yeah.
And that's what his answer was. Think of it this way: God is a human judge, only much more blameless or holy, and everybody is not innocent. So it's his mercy that he only saves these few people and throws the rest of them into the fire.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I did a small TikTok video on this because it's completely irrational and we all recognize it. Sin, they have this idea that the more you sin against someone, the greater the importance of that person, the greater your offense. And this is a very hierarchical, authority-based way of viewing things. But we can recognize that that's total nonsense. If I take an apple from a homeless man who hasn't eaten in 3 days, and I take an apple from the orchard of a man who owns 6 orchards, I have done the same act. Who have I more sinned against? Clearly, the homeless man. That was all he had. His vulnerability makes my action worse because it makes the impact of it worse. The rich man's not even going to know I took an apple. That homeless man is going to go hungry because I took an apple. So again, following the principle, the infinity of God's power means it is literally impossible to sin against him because it is impossible to hurt him. No matter what I do to him, I cannot injure him unless he chooses to be injured. And that's his choice. So the entirety of the Christian theology, and particularly the Calvinist Presbyterian versions of this inherited from Augustine, are the maximally unjust doctrine. It's not just wrong in the sense of being false. It's wrong in the sense of being maximally evil.
Catholics, yeah, you can see this apologetics with them too. They have original sin. So why was this baby born blind? Original sin. So it seems like it's trying to explain something like a myth does that people see. Because what did the baby do? You know, so yeah.
So I'm going to read another chat, or a series of them that are stacking up. Leteftik, I have no idea how to say that. €5, thank you, says the Permian period doesn't exist. Aaron, didn't you listen to Ken the Ham? And then Larry Fishman, $10, thank you, says meteorite airbursts are impacts powerful enough to destroy small cities happen about once a century. Imagine how primitive backwater savages would react to seeing a city destroyed by a literal fireball. Would they even see it? When something is coming,
somebody on the hill might see it.
Yeah, so somebody would probably see it. I would.
They were blind.
These things are pretty bright. Like they outshine.
Oh, no, those guys are all dead.
You could definitely see the aftermath of it, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Is you come to this totally messed up post-apocalyptic wasteland, and you think, "Wow, what caused that?"
You know,
well, if we're talking
about pissed off God.
I do have one note about this. So interestingly, in Pompeii. So we, of course, know the story where it was, everything was they were all buried alive, right? So interestingly, after Pompeii, someone did go back to Pompeii, and they actually wrote on one of the walls. They wrote the word Sodom. Huh. So yeah, that still exists. And it's like honestly, I was looking at the picture and it was kind of hard for me to see it where it was exactly written. It's very hard to reconstruct. But it's so it does show that like someone coming back to a place like that would at least
Make
in
that
this later
reference.
period would view it in the same lens as Sodom, but perhaps at the if there was a historical Sodom that got destroyed like that, then they probably would have viewed it as some divine destruction.
Yeah, well, I see that the asteroid, if there was an asteroid that was enough to wipe out a whole town, and two towns in this case, then if we're talking about fire and brimstone raining down from the sky, that's a volcano. But if you're talking about a meteor, then that is like getting a gunshot to the head when you didn't see the assassin. That's just boom, it's done. The fuck was that? They wouldn't. I mean, maybe outside witnesses could have seen there was a single streak or something like that, but
Yeah,
I'm
and
not. I'm not.
presumably everything would burst into flames afterwards. I mean, I
Yeah.
I would expect
wanted to
the town to burn.
circle back briefly to something Lilith said in another podcast. Maybe this charging people with the sin of sodomy was kind of an excuse to make them an out group. They're not as holy as us. Let's take their things, etc.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that, a lot of justification for out grouping specific people, other tribes in the Canaanite lands. It's something we see all the time, rewriting history to make someone else the bad guy so that you can get people on board with waging war against someone that you have no other justification to wage war against.
In
or even if you do.
America, we're so divided because even still, LGBTQ divides us to hate each other.
Mm-hmm. Yep. People are
Politically.
very, very hateful.
I wonder
And-
why they
and-
died, yeah.
Like the meme says, men in dresses raping children, that's not transgender you're thinking of. That's priests. Like that historically, those are not the people that your children are unsafe around. But because, again, Christians are so obsessed with sex, I maintain, judging by how it has played out historically from the earliest divisions in Gnosticism and everything to now, that Christianity is fundamentally about sex and sexual repression. It always has been. And I maintain that. And in the same way, anything about sex is what they get the most wound up about. And then if it's something different, they can't just be like, okay, that's a thing, moving on with my life. They have to assume everybody different is predatory and evil and blah, 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 blah.
Religion also has a tendency to kind of like act like they own things like sex and death and marriage.
And morality.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the beautiful
baby.
little snake.
Look at that, baby.
This is Durango. He's a bull snake.
Durango. Hello, Durango. I want to pet your chin.
You should name one. If you have a snake, you should name him Nahash, which is the Hebrew name for snake.
Okay, I
Nahash.
thought it was Sefa.
Are we pronouncing Samael correctly?
I didn't hear it.
Are we pronouncing Samael correctly? Our other snake's name?
I don't know what is.
It's spelled. It's spelled Sam.
Again, because the Hebrew when you use transliteration to Hebrew, I just don't understand because the S can be a sha, and I don't know.
So it's essentially in later mythology.
Maybe
I think it's like the king of demons. It was another name for Satan as well, I think.
Right.
It's one of the ones I ran off to bone when I left Adam.
Yeah, one of the angels that slept with human women.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still working on hand taming him. He's rattling his tail and hissing at me, even opened his mouth a moment ago. He really wants me to he's a rattler, but I'm just not buying it.
Okay, so there is
Aw.
it is actually pronounced Semael in Chazal. The etymology of the name is derived from Suma, which means blindness, and God. So it basically means blinding the eyes to seeing God.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
coincidentally, at this point, we had a chat that says "How to Rule an Asteroid." This is the author of the chat comment for $5 Canadian. It says, "Hello, sir. I hope you enjoy your Titanotherium miniature. By the way, thank you. His name is Tiberius Titanotherium. Thank you. Somebody sent me a
Aw.
diorama of a
Aw.
fossil dig. It was quite nice.
Aw.
Mhm.
Okay, and then Reverend Howell says, "Don't go into the forbidden zone, the magic forest, the black Atlantic, or your mom's handbag. If 25% is true, all of it true?"
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
finally, "How to Rule an Asteroid" again.
This is
Oh,
the
wait,
same
that's
comment, I
the
think.
same one again.
Yeah.
Will you quit hissing at me?
Oh,
I'm not buying it. Just
you're not my
chill.
real dad.
Fuck off.
Yeah, we haven't
Let
had
him
him
hide
long.
in your
We're trying to
hair.
hand tame him. He's very young. He'll be
Mm.
8 feet long when he's full grown.
Wow. Wow.
I think
I
we
was
should
up-
continue with our study.
You know what? I have a controversial suggestion that I hesitate to make, but we've had so much good stuff in this episode. Can we pause here and take up the incest and whatnot of the rest of the chapter next time?
But this would be odd because we're what? Yeah, we can do that. We'll just label this as 19 because we've done this for well over 2 hours already. So it's a fair point.
Yeah.
And let me see how much is left of this.
We can get to the
not
end
much,
of
actually.
29.
There is 11
We can
there
get
is
to the end
11
of
verses
29.
here.
It's so juicy.
Yeah. Let me just read the last verse of this before it goes on to the next segment.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived.
Okay, I wanted to comment on
happy
this.
ending.
So okay, so the verse, he remembered Abraham. So Rashi comments, he remembered that Lot knew that Sarah was Abraham's wife, and that when he heard that Abraham said in Egypt regarding Sarah, quote, "She is my sister," he did not betray him because he had sympathy with him. For this reason, God had mercy upon him.
Well,
Okay.
okay.
So
glad
he
to
was
have
an
that.
accessory to prostituting his wife and blackmailing the Pharaoh of Egypt. And for this reason, because he's part of the family and he didn't tell us secrets, we don't know. Gets protection.
All right. So
God is a
next
mob
week,
boss confirmed.
next week I will build this as just Genesis 19, and we'll just pick up from here as Fitzgerald suggested.
You should label it Genesis 19, the sexy parts.
Yeah, and my wife and a couple of others have wanted to move the time of this show back an hour since we're
Not
no
back
longer
an
doing
hour, forward an hour.
forward. You want to do it earlier?
No, forward.
No, it's the opposite is true.
Yeah, because forward would be further in time.
Well, personally,
Okay, gotcha.
An
personally,
hour
it'll be-
later.
Yeah.
Hour
For
Okay.
me, I will start at. This means that I will start in 8 p.m., which is fine. But if, for example, my family wants to go out and
Mhm.
I don't know, for me 7 p.m., which is my time, is perfectly fine. It's perfect.
Okay. So yeah, so Tomer wants to keep it the time that it is.
What is
I'm
my
fine
wife
with
everybody?
wanted-
keeping the time it is too, but I can
What's
go
that?
either way. I'm fine with keeping the time it is, but I can go either way.
Be careful about saying that you can go either way, because given the context of the story we've been talking about today,
Right.
Don't go for the flaming eyes.
And yeah, I was going to say I'm easy, so
all right. Well, we may do the regular time next week then.
And I'm very
Okay.
flexible.
All right.
Oh,
My wife was
it's
trying
just-
to do a favor for people, especially like Fitzgerald, who he's 2 hours earlier than us.
I appreciate
So
it.
I would
So-
be fine moving it later. I would enjoy the chance to get a little more coffee set up before I turned my brain on. But I'm fine keeping it the same as well.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll argue an email about that then. All right, and I'll go ahead and close it up and see you guys next week. We're doing the Book of Mormon not later this afternoon. The Book of Mormon, by unanimous decision, has been moved to Sunday. So it's the same time. It'll still be 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, but that will be tomorrow. And that way we'll have a full complement. I believe we'll even have Fitzgerald there, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
after your Sunday stream, you should be all like, you know what? Since the stream is over, you guys should go watch the Milwaukee Atheist stream, which is starting. So, that's a good idea.
That's an
we'll make
excellent
sure to
idea.
include a link to that some way when we do this tomorrow. All right, well, we'll go ahead and close it up. I've got to go meet with the satanic congregation anyway, so.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this very much.
All right,
Good night, all.
thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Good night.